She's so incredible. How is she holding up? Because we've been thinking about her, we've been praying for her.
She's in mom mode right now. She has 3 young kids that she has to care for. It's a really tough time for the family.
Have you ever seen someone smile through heartbreak and wondered what pain was hidden behind that smile? You can't imagine, but it's true. When tragedy struck Sheinelle Jones' life, fans worried if she would ever find her light again. But Dylan Dreyer, her dear friend and co-host, just shared an update that reveals both the heartbreak and the strength behind Sheinelle's journey. And the truth is, something you won't want to miss. Friendship in the spotlight. When you watch the Today Show, it's easy to believe the laughter and playful exchanges between Dylan Dreyer and Sheinelle Jones are just part of the script. But behind the cameras, their bond runs much deeper. It's the kind of friendship that isn't manufactured for television. It's lived, felt, and tested through life's highs and lows. That friendship would become even more important when Sheinelle faced a loss that shattered her world. Her husband, the man she once described as her rock, passed away, leaving a hole not only in her life, but also in the lives of her children. For fans who had grown used to Sheinelle's radiant smile, the news was a punch to the gut. But for Dylan, who had stood beside her in the studio day after day, it was more than just shocking. It was heartbreaking to see her friend broken in a way she couldn't fix. Dylan has since spoken about those early days after the tragedy. She remembers Sheinelle trying to keep herself together, showing up for work because she felt she had to, not because she wanted to. "She's one of the strongest women I know," Dylan explained, "but sometimes strength looks like simply getting out of bed in the morning." That's the thing about friendship. It shows up when life falls apart. Dylan became more than just a co-host. She became Sheinelle's safe space, the one who didn't expect her to smile when it felt impossible, the one who sat quietly when silence was the only comfort. And while the world may have only seen Sheinelle return to her chair on Today, Dylan saw the private struggle, the tears in dressing rooms, the exhaustion of holding everything together for the kids at home. It's often said that grief doesn't create character, it reveals it. And what Dylan saw in Sheinelle was a woman who refused to let heartbreak define her, even when it threatened to swallow her whole. And in return, Dylan's loyalty revealed the kind of friendship many of us long for, one that stands steady in the storm. Their story reminds us that behind every polished television smile is a very real human being, and sometimes the difference between falling apart and holding on is the presence of a true friend. The weight of grief. Grief has a way of sneaking into every corner of life. For Sheinelle Jones, it wasn't just the quiet nights at home that reminded her of the absence. It was the little things, the empty chair at the dinner table, the silence in the mornings when her husband's voice was no longer there, the way her children's eyes sometimes searched for reassurance she didn't always know how to give. On screen, viewers still saw the Sheinelle they admired, professional, kind, and composed. But off-screen, grief was heavy, relentless. There were moments when even the simplest tasks felt overwhelming. She once admitted to Dylan that she would sometimes sit in her car before going inside the house, just trying to summon the strength to walk through the door and be mom again. It wasn't about being dramatic, it was survival. Dylan Dreyer noticed all of this. She could tell when her friend's smile was genuine and when it was just a mask for the cameras. And because Dylan knew what the world didn't, she made it her mission to lighten that invisible load whenever she could. Sometimes that meant bringing Sheinelle coffee and just sitting with her in silence. Other times, it meant cracking a joke that drew out real laughter, the kind that momentarily cut through the sadness. Grief is unpredictable. It doesn't follow a schedule, and it doesn't care about deadlines or morning shows. There were days when Sheinelle seemed strong, ready to tackle the world again, and then, without warning, waves of sadness would pull her under. Dylan described it as watching someone fight to keep their head above water while carrying an anchor tied to their heart. But what was most remarkable was Sheinelle's honesty. Instead of hiding her pain, she let Dylan see the raw parts of her journey. The fear of raising kids alone, the loneliness that lingered even in a room full of people, the struggle of balancing personal heartbreak with public responsibility. And in that honesty, Sheinelle gave others a gift. By sharing her grief openly with her closest friends, she reminded us all that strength isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about finding the courage to keep moving forward, even when every step feels impossible. Moving forward with grace. Life after loss is never about getting over it. It's about learning how to carry it with you. For Sheinelle Jones, moving forward didn't mean forgetting her husband or the love they shared. It meant honoring him by choosing to live with the same courage and kindness that had defined their life together. Dylan Dreyer often said she admired the way Sheinelle handled herself in those fragile months. Instead of shutting down, Sheinelle allowed her vulnerability to be seen, both by her children and her closest friends. She showed them that grief could coexist with laughter, that tears and joy could share the same space. There were moments of breakthrough, like the first time she laughed so hard with Dylan that it brought tears to her eyes, not from sadness, but from joy. Or the morning she returned to the studio with a steadier smile, saying, "I know he'd want me to keep shining." These weren't just small victories. They were proof of resilience. Grace became Sheinelle's guiding word. Grace for herself, on the days she didn't feel strong. Grace for her children, as they process their own grief in different ways. And grace for life itself, with all its unpredictability. Through it all, Dylan remained by her side, not as a co-worker, not even just as a friend, but as family. Their bond deepened into something unshakable, a living example of how love and friendship can carry us when our own strength falters. And as Sheinelle slowly built a new chapter, one where pain and hope walked hand in hand, her story reminded everyone watching that true grace is not about perfection. It's about choosing love, choosing resilience, and choosing to keep moving forward, even when the path is heavy. So while Sheinelle's heart still carries the weight of her husband's absence, Dylan's update gives hope. Sheinelle is standing, surviving, and slowly learning to smile again. And for anyone who has ever carried grief, her story is a powerful reminder. Love never truly leaves us.